welcome to my channel. I'm Linda, the scrapbooking photographer. If this is your first time here, thanks for stopping by. If you're a regular, then welcome back. Today I am taking part in the Mix It Up Monday YouTube hop, where we are given a sketch to follow, and today's is by Rochelle Spears, which is a great layout incorporating 4 different photos. And we're encouraged to combine old-fashioned scrapbooking, traditional scrapbooking, with some new techniques. So we'll incorporate a little bit of mixed media and what have you in this sketch. Now, I'm also taking part in a Soul Scrappers challenge, which is the monochromatic one for this month. If we wanted to take part, we would be assigned a colour. So the colour I was assigned is brown. And that works perfectly for documenting our recent harvest of potatoes. That's how they looked as they were growing, just beautiful full garden of potatoes under there. And then we started digging them out, and it was like digging for treasure. There were so many potatoes under there. We'll be eating them for quite some time. We've given a few away, and we ended up with half a dozen really big shopping bagfuls. So that's what I'll be doing today, and that works well with the brown colour. I'm also going to be using some thin cut alphabet. Probably use this stamp somewhere. I quite like the textures here. And this is an old set from Close to My Heart for Backyard Bliss scrapbooking. It doesn't actually have any potatoes on it, but it does have this little shovel and spade. So I will find something to use from there. And paper-wise, I'm starting with a mocha background, and I'll use some toffee to come in to put the photos on. And I'm going to use some mix-in papers and also some scrap brown, just normal brown paper. I thought this would work quite well because that's the sort of bag that we put the potatoes in, and it looks a little bit roughed up. And since I've been working a little bit on some junk journaling, I'm finding so many extra uses for things that are just lying around the house. So let's see what we come up with. The first thing I'll do is take the mocha cardstock and gut the back out of it. So I'm moving the trimmer in about 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches, and cutting the inside square out. Now that will give me a piece of mocha to use for some mounting purposes, but also gives a nice frame for the toffee paper. Now if I cut 1/2 inch off 2 sides of the toffee, I end up with 1/4 inch gap around the outside, so that will work well. And just to help them to blend a little bit, I'm using the little foam dome thingies with the mocha ink just to go around the outside. Now there's loads of ways that you can do this. Sometimes I do it directly on the stamp pad, but my favourite way I think is using these foam domes. They just spread it out quite nicely and give an equal, even sort of a blending amount all the way around, and it just helps it to sit comfortably on the background. So I won't stick that yet. I've just squeezed the top of the ink pad onto the ink, and I'm spraying it with a little bit of water. So this is just to add a few dots on the top left and bottom right of the toffee piece, and I'm using my fan brush just to mop up all of that watery ink and tapping it to spray it in those 2 places. And before I put the ink pad together again, I'll wipe it really well with a paper towel because I don't want the water to contaminate the ink. And just to add a little bit extra colour, I'm using some gold gloss spray and tapping a little bit over the top of the brown dots. Now that will give just another sort of a different brown shade to what we're doing. Now while that's drying, I'll trim the photos down a bit. The theme is brown, so I'll get rid of some of the green of the leaves because we can see that in the big photo. And I want to have all the photos different sizes in this layout. So this photo has me with my t-shirt hooked up holding potatoes, and my husband's got some in his hand, so that's the important thing we need to see there. I'll trim a little bit off that bigger photo, and I'll also take a square out of the potatoes. So I want the smaller square photo to be just potatoes. So I'm trimming it down to, I think it ends up about 3 inches square. So that gives me the 4 photos that are in the layout. Now to make use of the rest of these photos, I'm trimming them into 2-inch squares. So I'll end up with another half a dozen or so to use in a different layout, perhaps the companion page. So now I can use the mocha from the back that I gutted out, and I'll just mount these 2 photos. So that big one and then this 3-inch square one. In the layout it has an elongated bottom on it. So there is actually a die cut that is now available from Close to My Heart that does that, but I haven't got one yet. So I've just made one and I'll put the photo on top. And that gives me my pile of photos. I'll pop them to one side, bring in a piece of toffee cardstock that I'm going to prepare to make the title. I really like this textured stamp, and I think if I use some mocha ink it will kind of resemble some earthy look. So I've put the cardstock onto the spongy side of my Versamat and a piece of scrap paper underneath it, so that when I go off the side it doesn't matter. Now I'm not placing these in any particular order, I'm just randomly fitting them in so that the whole of the piece of toffee cardstock is covered with these earthy patterns. And when that's finished, I'll clean the stamp off and then do exactly the same as what I did to the page that's going on the bottom. So I have pressed the lid of the ink pad to the ink, then added a little bit of water to the lid and mixed it with my fan brush so that I can tap it all over the cardstock and get that similar look. Cleaning the top of the ink pad so that the water doesn't contaminate the ink, and then I'll do the same that I did before with the gloss spray and just tap it lightly over the cardstock. So cleaning the mat off, I can bring the piece of toffee back now and place the photos the way I want them. And I think they'll fit okay and very similar to the sketch. So the next thing we need to do to follow the sketch is to make the dovetails to come out either side. So the first thing I'm doing it with is a piece of the mix-in paper. Now I've cut it to 2 inches wide, and then halfway I'm just cutting in from the end for about 1 3/4 inches so that I can then use my scissors to cut from the corner into the intersection, and that gives me those even dovetails. Then I can place them underneath on each side so that they fit in the frame, and I might have to move the photos around a bit to make everything kind of fit okay, but we'll do that when I stick it down. And then using my piece of just brown scrap paper, I'll get a piece about 2 inches wide. I'm sort of just guessing this bit because I want it to have that ripped rustic look. And I see I nearly used my scissors, so I do use the scissors, however, to make the dovetail. And initially I fold the dovetail to try and give me a place to tear, but it didn't work as well as just doing it. So on the other end I don't bother doing that, I just tear it out. And then I'll cut it in half and place those where I want them, just sticking over the top of the other dovetail there as per the sketch. While I'm putting that together, I noticed that the mocha cardstock with the white core is a little bit distracting, and I really want to get rid of the white core. So I bring in my foam dome again and go around the outside of both the big photo and the small 3-inch square one. And then I'm happy to stick everything down. But I feel that that shopping paper has blended a little bit too much into the toffee background. So I'm bringing out my colouring pencils and just adding a little bit of colour with the darkest brown onto the shopping bag, and that actually just brings it out a bit and gives it a bit more of a dirty look to it. These colouring pencils are fabulous from Close to My Heart. They're a waxy type base and very good to blend with, and I just love using them, particularly if you use them on the side of them rather than as a pencil, and they colour very nicely. The next thing I want to do is the title. So now that the extra piece of cardstock that we put the texture stamp and the dots on is dry, I'll bring out the thin cuts and cut them out on my Cuttlebug. So the title is going to be Potato Harvest. So there's obviously some double ups in the letters, but I'll do a couple of runs through the Cuttlebug to get them all. I really think this title is going to look good, but because it's on the toffee background, I will need to highlight it on some mocha. I'll grab a strip of mocha that's left over from the background piece, and I'll just adhere them. And I end up with this in one title, which obviously isn't going to fit across the top. So I'm just going to trim it so there's the same amount of space at the top as the bottom, and then I'll cut it into 2 words. Now once it's in its 2 bits, I'll go around the outside of each with my foam dome again and give it that nice brown edge rather than having the white core come out. And that keeps it in keeping with all the other mocha on the page as well. So just trying to fit it up the top, I realised that the harvest is going to go partially over the photo, and that's okay because it covers some of that bright light that was in the top of the photo as well. So I've just made sure that it's centered and straight before sticking it down. I've popped potato above the top of it, and then I can put this whole page to the mocha background, which I think brings out that mocha colour really nicely. Now I've also decided to put 2024 down the bottom just to carry those words through, so I'll use my Cuttlebug again to get these 4 numbers and follow exactly the same process to get the 2024 little banner that I'm going to put down on the bottom of the page. When I stick it on, I want it to be at the same angle as the potato and the harvest, so the title flows through the page. Now bringing in my Backyard Bliss thin cuts, I'm just going to cut out that little trowel and fork. And before I stamp them, I'm also going to cut a piece of toffee to fit underneath that square photo of potatoes, because there's also a stamp in this set that says "From the Garden of," and it has some little line underneath to write whose garden it is. So here's a close-up view of me trying to get these straight on the block. Quite a tricky thing to do, but I do get there in the end, and use the mocha ink to stamp onto the toffee piece where I can write our names. And I'll also use the mocha ink on top of the mocha cardstock for the shovel and trowel, and that just really highlights their shape. So once I've got those done, I can pop them onto the page, and then I will add a few gems. These gems actually came with the Silver Bells card making set before Christmas at the end of last year, and they just mix in beautifully. Bringing out my brown colouring pencil again, I'm going to do a little bit of doodling. You probably can't see it very well on camera, but I will put some close-ups in the photos at the end of the video, so check it out. It's really just little dots, just like in the sketch, going around the bottom of the layout, and it sort of links things together and just adds a little bit extra. Speaking of extra, the latest Sweet Memories card making set from Close to My Heart has this gorgeous little doodle thing in its thin cut set. So I'm going to add a mocha one of those up in the right hand side just to add a little bit more to that top corner. And to balance that, I feel the need to move the trowel and the fork a little bit over to the left to the end of my doodled lines, and then I just finish doodling over where there were gaps and add just a couple of extra little gems. And that completes my layout for this month's Mix It Up Monday and my brown challenge for Soul Scrappers. Thank you so much for joining me today. Have a lovely day and happy crafting, everyone.